Welcome in, Bills Mafia. Welcome back to another edition of the Go Bills podcast presented by GoBillsPodcast.com. I am your host and founder of the page, Brett McDurphy. Glad to be with you on this Wednesday evening on the first day of training camp. It was an excellent day for the Buffalo Bills overall in terms of what they did today on the field at St. John Fisher. Number one, the biggest thing that happened today was Damar Hamlin being back on the field, seeing him back in a jersey again on the field, taking reps in training camp. But with that being said, we are going to discuss our main subject for the episode today, which is Bubble Watch, the top 5 veteran players who need a good training camp to solidify a roster spot on the Buffalo Bills. We already started this series off a couple days ago where we talked about the top 5 rookies who need to solidify a good training camp to make an NFL roster. And while that might not be the Buffalo Bills roster, it may be another team's roster. So they can put together some good film so they can make a team's roster. Now we're going to bring it back and discuss the top 5 veterans who need a strong training camp to make the Buffalo Bills roster. Now, some of the terms that may be in place for why they might not make the team is because of monetary contractual situations that they have with the Buffalo Bills. The Bills could save some money and use that towards getting a veteran player that they feel can bolster the starting lineup, or it could just be because of injuries that have happened to these players. So with that being said, let's talk about the top 5 veterans who need a strong training camp to solidify a roster spot on the Buffalo Bills. The first player that we're going to discuss is Ike Bucker. Bucker was a very good player for the Buffalo Bills in 2019 season, but unfortunately injuries have happened and he had an Achilles injury and he was unable to play much of last year, having come back late into the season. Now the Bills did bring him back on a 1-year contract this year, and the Bills also have brought in some more competition around him as well. Connor McGovern as well as David Edwards are the 2 free agent additions that the Bills signed, as well as the Bills drafting Osiris Torrance in the second round of the 2023 NFL Draft. Before his Achilles injury, Bucker was starting over Ryan Bates. However, Ryan Bates signed a 4-year contract last offseason, so it'll be hard for the Bills to move on from him. Of the guys at the offensive guard position that are the easiest to move, I believe that Bucker is going to be the easiest one to move. He is only under contract for this year, earning $1.1 million. And of that contract, only $50,000 is guaranteed. So the Bills could gain a little bit of monetary value by releasing him, and they could take some of that money and use it towards getting another player as well. The second player that we're going to talk about is Siren Neal. Neal is an interesting player, having only played in just 6% of all defensive snaps last season. However, he is an important player for the Buffalo Bills in terms of special teams, where he played in 77% of the snaps overall. Neal made 19 tackles overall last season, but the Bills could save $2.4 million by cutting Neal and converting that money to signing a veteran player who wants to take an incentive-based deal to win a championship. Now, of the guys that I think that the Bills could move on from with Neal, the Bills could use that money towards getting a veteran running back, somebody that may become available if there is a surprise cut after training camp and after the preseason. Or they could use that money towards a guy like Dalvin Cook or Ezekiel Elliott. Now, the Bills did sign another running back as well, but I do think that the Bills can utilize the money that they're paying Siren Neal for another player. With a ton of competition that they have at the cornerback position with guys like Christian Benford, Alex Austin, Jamarcus Ingram, Cam Lewis, and Cameron Dantzler, Neal's time in Buffalo could be coming to a close very shortly if he doesn't have a good camp. Now, the Bills have moved Neal around. He was formerly a safety and then moved him towards the nickel cornerback spot where he could play a depth piece on the roster. But the Bills did bring in another guy in Taylor Rapp as well. So the Bills could move on from Tyron Neal, especially with all the depth that they've added to the secondary as well. And they could use the money in other areas. So I do believe that it's going to be tough for Neal to make the roster. But if he has a good training camp, then by all means, he may make the roster. The third guy we're going to discuss is someone who is currently on the PUP list for the Buffalo Bills, and that's Jordan Phillips. Phillips is an interesting player to talk about, having starting training camp on the PUP list after offseason surgery to repair a torn rotator cuff. While Phillips is a fan favorite, having signed in 2018, he had his best season overall in his career in 2019 with 9.5 sacks. After the completion of the 2019 season, Phillips went on to go to the Arizona Cardinals, signing a 3-year contract. However, injuries happened during his time in Arizona, and he ended up only playing in less than double-digit games in both seasons with the Arizona Cardinals. The Bills brought Phillips back last season, hoping that he could solidify and upgrade the defensive line position. However, Phillips was unhealthy, and he ended up missing 4 games last season and only recorded 20 tackles and 1.5 sacks, having a little bit of a down year for him. Now, the Bills did bring him back this offseason on a 1-year deal, but the Bills also have added some depth to the defensive tackle position as well, with starters in place with Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver. The Bills also have guys behind him in Tim Settle, as well as free agent addition Poona Ford. Now, Jordan will need to stay healthy this offseason and also start to make contributions in the defensive line to make the Bills roster. If that's not the case, the Bills could save $1.64 million by cutting Phillips. The fourth player on our list we are going to discuss is A.J. Klein. After 5 years with Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano solidifying the 2 linebacker positions, the Bills now have an open position at the middle linebacker position with Edmonds' departure to the Chicago Bears. Now, Klein has bounced around the NFL in the last year, having been cut by the Buffalo Bills last offseason to save $5 million. He did move on to go to the Giants, where he spent some time on the practice squad, but that time was very limited, only being on the practice squad for 3 days before the Ravens poached him to be on their 53-man roster. His time with the Ravens was cut short after 2 games, and he was traded in the Roquan Smith trade to the Chicago Bears, where he only played in 2 games there as well. After being cut by the Chicago Bears, he ended up coming back to the Buffalo Bills after an injury to Tremaine Edmonds and also some injuries to Matt Milano. So the Bills added him to the roster, where he played in a couple of games last year, having a 10-tackle game against the Detroit Lions. Now, he was a very good player when he was first in the NFL. He's now on the tail end of his career overall, and he is pretty close to retirement. So he may be just chasing the ring, which is probably what he's trying to do right now. And he does have some competition behind him for the middle linebacker position with guys like Terrell Bernard, as well as Tyrell Dodson and Balin Spector. Now, the Bills did decide that they're going to have Dorian Williams try and play the outside linebacker position this season. That was announced by Brandon Beane today. So if A.J. Klein wants to make the roster for the Buffalo Bills, he's going to have to beat out guys like Balin Spector, as well as third-round pick Tyrell Bernard from last year. So it's going to be tough for him to make the roster, as well as he's going to have to make an impact on special teams if he wants to make the roster, where that position has been solidified by Tyler Matakevich. So it'll be tough for him to make the roster with only $100,000 guaranteed in his contract. The Bills can cut him and have a minimal cap penalty to them as well. The fifth guy on our list is Shaq Lawson, and this comes as a little bit of a surprise. And I know that Bills Mafia is not going to love this pick. The Bills pass rusher signed a 1-year contract last April, and after a really good return from him in the 2022 season, the former first-round pick by the Buffalo Bills reunited with the franchise after 2 campaigns on rival teams in the AFC East. He immediately made an impact when Von Miller got injured in Week 12 of the 2022 season and was picked ahead of guys like Boogie Basham and A.J. Epinesa to start in Von's place. Lawson finished the last 5 games of the season strong, having 11 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble in the final 5 games, overall finishing his 2022 season with 31 tackles and 3.5 sacks. However, he was quiet in the playoffs, and that's something that concerned me a little bit. With the addition of Leonard Floyd as well, Shaq's time on the Buffalo Bills could be coming to an end. As well as the Bills don't like to move on from their draft picks very often, especially if they're early draft picks. So the Bills might want to have the younger experience and roll with them along with Leonard Floyd. So Shaq's time may be coming to an end there. Now, the Bills did add a guy in Shane Ray, who was a former first-round pick by the Denver Broncos as well. If Shane Ray beats out Shaq Lawson in training camp, then Shaq may be off the roster or he could be on the practice squad for the Buffalo Bills. So that's why I'm picking Lawson on my list. Now, you could say that there's some other competition at the defensive end position with guys like Boogie Basham or even A.J. Epinesa, but I do think that A.J. Epinesa had a pretty good year last year, having 6.5 sacks. So the reason why I picked Shaq Lawson on this list is because he is the one that has the least trade value for the Buffalo Bills. In other news around the Buffalo Bills today, they did have training camp today, having started at 9:45 today. Some news from the Buffalo Bills on training camp is I'll start with the team's offensive line that started. The offensive line that started today, the first team offensive line was Dawkins, McGovern, Morse, Bates, and Brown, which was not really surprising, but you could have mixed in David Edwards as well. But I'm not really surprised with that starting offensive line. I know that many people probably wanted Osiris Torrance to start, but you got to remember he's very early in camp, and I wouldn't give him the start over Ryan Bates, somebody that knows the offense very well. But the Bills are going to try and mix in the best 5 guys on the offensive line, and you'll see Torrance start to get some reps with the first team offensive line as well. Other news around camp, Christian Benford had his first interception, or had the first interception of training camp, picking off Josh Allen while covering Stephon Diggs in the red zone. As well as Kyer Elam is working with the second team defense, where Christian Benford was getting the start at the position opposite of Tre'Davious White for the number 2 cornerback position. It's going to be an interesting battle to see who wins that battle between Benford and Kyer Elam. And you also have to throw into the mix Dane Jackson as well. He's a sleeper to finish with the job at number 2 cornerback. Today you saw Stephon Diggs meet with the media as well. Diggs had a conversation, he says, with Sean McDermott, and his main focus was only on winning. And that's always been what he wanted to get out of that conversation. And he said that the way that we lost last year was terrible, and it caused a lot of frustration from him. He did say that he has far less football left ahead of him than he does behind him. So he just wants the team to get better. That's mostly what the aspect of that was today. So he does think that it's water under the bridge right now. The Bills did work a lot in the red zone today, having worked a lot in 7-on-7s, which was something that the Bills really struggled with in the red zone, was the red zone efficiency. So it was great to see that the Bills are working on something that they struggled with last year. Diggs also said that it's insane to suggest that he wanted more say in the offense because he is a receiver. He said it's outlandish that people said I question my role and that he's a team captain, and that Coach McDermott has had an open door policy on players coming to him and talking to him about what's on their mind. He also said that he is good with Josh Allen and that he's his guy, and that he says that they have always had and do have a good relationship. And then he said, this is the biggest thing that I took into play what he said, and this is something that I know Bills Mafia is going to love. He said, somebody asked him if he wanted to retire as a Buffalo Bill, and he said 100%. So I do think everything is behind him, and I think it's all good. We'll have more news for you later in the week on training camp over the next couple of days. If anything does break away and there's an injury or something like that, you can tune into the Go Bills podcast on Instagram to get any up-to-the-minute updates on what's going on at training camp. However, if there is something that's breaking, we will come to you on YouTube for any information that you need to hear. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on all social media accounts. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, as well as Instagram. And now we are on Threads as well. Threads is a little bit of a combination between the Twitter and Instagram. So it's a little bit of a combination between them, and it's a great app. If you are not on it, don't forget to like us on there as well. I will go with the comments real quick on Facebook to start. Tyon Handy said, please let's go get a Lombardi trophy, boy. I completely agree. Can't wait to see what the Bills do this season. You got to remember, we're only a couple of weeks away from the preseason beginning. That will begin on August 12th. It's coming up very fast. Can't wait for that to happen. But it is going to be a ton of fun. Cannot wait for that. 3 preseason games this year. We have another comment from Joey Hash. He did not comment anything. I think he might have accidentally hit the button as well. But don't forget to like and subscribe to us on all our social media accounts, as well as on our website, gobillspodcast.com. You can go on over to the website to see all of our upcoming shows that we will have coming up this week. We have a few more coming up later in the week where we will be dissecting a film study. Well, it might not be a film study. We're still debating on whether we're going to do the film study or not. But we're going to be dissecting the 90s to now, comparing Jim Kelly and Josh Allen's careers so far, having been Josh has played for now entering his 6th season with the Buffalo Bills. So we will dissect that. We will also have another show coming up as well on another topic. I'm trying to remember what it is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that topic is going to be the top 5 games in Highmark Stadium history, as well as not only Highmark Stadium, but also Rich Stadium and Ralph Wilson Stadium. So we're going to do an Out with the Old, In with the New series on the top 5 games that are going to be from the stadium. So that'll be another interesting series. That'll be going on. The stadium one is going to be going on Saturday. And then Sunday, we will have the Josh Allen and Jim Kelly comparison as well. So don't forget to tune into those as well. Also, don't forget to go on over to the AFC East Summit. We did a YouTube show yesterday on the AFC East Summit where we hosted it. It's a great show where we did on the starting 11 offense. And we did it. It was based off of current rosters, and it was also based off of the overall team starting 11. So you couldn't choose guys like at the wide receiver position. You couldn't choose Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Jalen Waddle to be your starting wide receivers. It had to be guys like, if there was a number 1 receiver, it had to be a number 1 receiver, a number 2 receiver, and a number 3 receiver. So it's an interesting series that you will see, and you will also love to see that as well. Also, don't forget to go on over to the Nickel City Mafia and Red, White, and Bills and tune in, because we will have shows with them as well coming up within the next couple of weeks. This has been the Go Bills podcast, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Go Bills podcast. until then, go Bills. And before we leave, I'm going to go with these. We had a couple more comments that came in real quick. I'm just going to go with them real fast in the comments. Joey Hash said that you can always share to my page, 12th Man Mafia, and I am an admin for the Josh Allen Mafia. You can share it to both pages. Let's go Bills. I do appreciate that, Joey. I will definitely do that. He also said that so glad that football is coming back and it's such a long off season. So, Joey, I will get in touch with you on Facebook as well. I will make sure I do that. And I do appreciate you for watching as well. So I will get in touch with you after the show. Tyone said, 20-year veteran with my favorite player was Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas, and I believe that rookie is going to be a beast. I still said we got the best team in the AFC East. I do agree with that. And Joey had another comment that he made as well, but you can't see it. All right, guys, this has been the Go Bills podcast. We'll see you next time for another edition of the Go Bills podcast. Until then, Go Bills.